You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Spirit Dimension with your host, Kerry Greenaway, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to The Spirit Dimension. My name is Kerry Greenaway, and I am bringing you a very special show tonight. I have got the most amazing lady on with me tonight. Her name is Kitty, and she has written one of the best books that I've read even on paranormal investigations. Now, the book is called When the Dead Speak, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigations. So before I go any further, let me introduce her. Her name is Kitty Janusz. Good evening, Kitty. How are you?
Well, good evening. I'm so flabbergasted. What a wonderful intro. Thank you for having me.
No, I really enjoyed your book. I read it. I really enjoyed it. And I tell you why. It's because you bridge the gap between paranormal investigations from a scientific perspective and a spiritual perspective as well. You're actually a psychic medium yourself, aren't you?
I am. It's a gift and a skill set that I had not really approached when I first started doing paranormal investigations. I didn't start saying, oh, I'm a psychic medium, I must, continue to speak with the dead, I must become a paranormal investigator. It actually was the other way around. I grew up in a paranormally active house, and I later started doing paranormal investigations at historical locations and in other private residences. And in contacting the dead through scientific equipment, I started wondering, well, I'm getting these recordings of people asking for help. What do I do now? So in that respect, I actually started from the other way around. When I started contacting the dead who were asking for help or communicating, bridging that veil, I realized that they were going to such extremes to reach out, to communicate, that I had to do my due diligence and find a way to communicate with them through being a psychic medium. So I actually kind of approached it from the other way.
So how does your gift actually manifest itself? I mean, there's so many different Claires, isn't there? But I believe you actually approach from a different, you have quite a few different of the Claires. There's quite a few Claires.
Well, for your listeners who are not always familiar with what the Claire is, Claire translates to being clear. So there's several different ways that a person can communicate. And I want to start by saying that all of us have psychic abilities. I get a lot of flack for this, but it's not so much, quote, a gift that is, given us from the divine. I consider it more of a skill set. We all have it. And obviously some of us are more talented, some of us are more talented musically. Some of us can play instruments more naturally than others, and others are more naturally gifted to communicate with the other side. But we all have that innate ability to have that sixth sense. And those who kind of, approach it from a technical aspect and, do the training and learn more of that as a skill. But going back to the clairs, you can communicate by being a clairaudient, which is, clear hearing. There's getting a sense of a taste in your mouth. You can be sitting there in a room and all of a sudden you're tasting, empanadas or something, and then that's when you say, oh, someone is here who is cooking. There is the sense of knowing. So there's about 6 or 7 different clairs, and it does jump around. It can jump around through a given investigation, or it can actually segue through the series of several months. I might be constantly hearing voices for the course of several months, and then it might segue more into I'm getting the innate emotions of someone else. And then over the course, maybe a couple years later, it might segue into something I'm getting more of their tasting, more of the or clairsentient kind of thing. So it can jump around from being one at a time to over the course of several months, and you'll just focus more on one. And I think it's just the way that the spirits are reaching out and how it's easier for them.
Mm-hmm. So when you're working in that way, leading up to an investigation, do you find yourself tuning in to the location pre-investigation?
Some people do. I do not, because I think it leads me to being predisposed as to what I might be picking up. Some people, we're going to this haunted location, and there's a ghost named Jack, and he always, bangs on the wall 3 times or something if you go there. If I go into that location with that predisposed mindset, I'm going to be focused on hearing 3 bangs on a wall from a guy named Jack. Mm-hmm. Whereas there might be some other spirit there who might be reaching out for help. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a location that has, quote, known spirits that communicate there. And we might pick up on somebody completely different who is not associated with that location, but just might have picked up on the sense that, hey, there's people there who want to speak to us, who have that ability, who are reaching out to us. I'm going to go there and speak with them. Case in point, we were at a very haunted location in San Diego, California, that was built on the grounds of the gallows, because he got the land cheap. He built a courthouse, built his family residence on this place, and one of the main spirits there is a man who was actually hanged from those gallows. And yes, he does come forward and communicate, but when we were there, a friend of mine who also works a lot in angel energies, and when she does so, blue sparks tend to manifest around her a little bit. And sometimes when I'm trying to communicate with a spirit, they'll actually try to utilize, my voice box, because you have to remember these spirits do not have a physical body anymore. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when they're trying to reach out to me, all of a sudden I can't talk. My whole voice, my whole throat just starts choking up, and I start getting a coughing attack. And sure enough, I start getting a coughing attack, and my friend is looking at me, and she's picking up on a small girl. Had no association with this building at all, but she was reaching out, and this young girl was in that moment of time where she realized that she had died, but she was still conscious enough that they were wrapping her up in the funeral shrouds. So she knew she was dead, but she was in that moment of time where she was being wrapped up in that funeral shrouds, and she was just in this sense of panic. And I'm looking at my friend, and I can't say anything, but I'm picking up on this, and my friend is just bringing in this angel energy. You see these blue sparks radiating around her, and my friend just starts audibly saying, this is just a memory. Sometimes you just have to talk to the person, say, this is just a memory. You're not in this point of time anymore. You can release from this and move on. And one of the docents at this museum is seeing these blue sparks, and she's saying, what is that? Because she had no idea what we were doing at the time. And people who were not associated with this angel energy, they're actually seeing these bright blue sparks kind of sparkle around her a little bit. And this little spirit had no association with this, with the gallows, with this, private residence. But she came in because she knows that it becomes a portal, so to speak. So if you go into a location saying, I'm going to go and communicate with, spirit X, Y, and Z, you might miss out on other energies that might be coming in to communicate. So in a way, I do like to know the history of a place. I want to know what's been going on there. I want to know what areas might be more active than others. But I am totally open when I go in a place, and I just kind of pick up on who happens to be there at that given time.
I agree. I don't particularly enjoy pre-investigation knowing anything about it, because it, like you say, it does colour your view when you go into the location. I like to go in cold and see what I get, and if I get it right, then game on. Do you know what I mean? It's validation, and so far so good.
Yeah, some people think, well, you're going in unprepared, but no, that's not the case. You have to go in knowing that anything might be coming in, but on the other side of the coin, you have to know the location itself, which is a lot of times why I do investigations during daylight hours. There's a power line over there. That's going to be bringing in, electromagnetic fields. Oh, there's a cemetery across the street. That might be influencing it. All these things that you might miss out in a nighttime investigation, you want to be aware of is, you have to do your baseline readings of, the electromagnetic fields. Is infrasound, might that be an issue? How old are the electrical in this particular location? Is that going to influence, is that power box in that other room, is that going to be setting off all your equipment? You have to be aware of all those things. But as far as contacting a specific spirit, you said it definitely can color your view if you go in with a predisposed mindset in a location. Anybody might be popping in, you don't know.
Well, this is very true. You just have no idea, do you? Now, you also are a Reiki master.
Yes.
And you work Reiki within the paranormal field, don't you?
I do. And when I first started getting into the paranormal, once again, I was finding these spirits in the need of help. And I was trying to find, a tool set that I could draw from in order to help these. And to be honest, I had not heard of Reiki at the time. I'm thinking, we reach out with our hands and there's energy. And that's baloney. I have never heard of such a thing. And I think probably the epiphany that I had was when we did some spoon bending exercises. And I don't know if you've ever tried. Have you ever tried spoon bending?
I did years and years ago when Uri Geller.
Yeah. I do. We do it a little bit differently, but it just will blow your mind on how you can manipulate the energy around you. And the way I do it is I hold usually a spoon. You could use forks. Usually the bowl in your left hand and the stem in my right hand. So I hold them across where Uri Geller would, balance it between his finger and his thumb. I hold them in both hands.
Okay.
And you sit there and you focus on making your energy and the spoon's energy one energy. And after that, you just do a breathing exercise. It's basically a meditation. You're doing a breathing exercise, and with each breath, you're breathing your energy into this spoon. And over the course of about a couple minutes, you'll notice that you can no longer really feel the spoon. And it becomes almost like the consistency of an old carrot. It's not going to melt. It's not going to just fold in half on its own. You do have to apply a little bit of pressure, but you can reach a crescendo of energy at this point. And I do a count to 10. And this old carrot spoon I've been able to almost tie them in a knot. And the trick is, once you let go, that connection is broken. So you can bend it and twist it. But I've done some research on this, and they found that spoons that are bent in this manner, they've done molecular studies of them and found that the twisted point has the same molecular changes in it to those of like almost carbon steel that have been exposed to extreme heat. And that was just, almost blowing my mind. So I'm thinking, okay, we can kind of manipulate the energy around us. And Reiki, which is from the Japanese words rei, meaning universally key, meaning energy. So you have universal energy. And you can tap into what you want to call, maybe it's divine energy, maybe it's angelic energy. I come more from, say, a Buddhist standpoint that the divine is all around us. Energy, obviously, is all around us.
Yeah.
So we're kind of tapping into that. And the wonderful, fascinating thing about Reiki is it can transcend time and space. And there was a study there was a horrible tornado, I believe it was in Kansas. Kansas is very flat. Tornadoes just whip through there and destroy everything. Mm-hmm. And many, many people were injured and hospitalized. And this was, I think, one of them was a case study back in the 40s. So I can't remember exactly when this study was done, but what they did was they took a blind study. They took the medical charts of all the people who were injured in this tornado back in the 40s. They divided them in half. They took half of the medical charts and they did Reiki just on the chart. They just focused healing energy on the chart itself. They didn't say what had happened to the person, if they died, if they healed, what had happened to them. What they did was after they did Reiki healing just on half of the charts, they went back and looked again at the charts of everyone who had been in this accident. And by looking at a fresh look at the charts, they found that all the charts that they had done Reiki healing on, all those people had a higher healing rate than the ones that they had not.
Yeah.
So this was, once again, going back because it transcends time. Now, the first time I tried doing it on an actual real-time person who had passed was on Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh.
Just because I wanted to give it a whirl. The first time I had tried to channel Edgar Allan Poe, because as a young girl, I'd always had a fascination with Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, a really unusual fascination with Edgar Allan Poe. I wasn't into, the dolls and the weird thing. And it wasn't just a ghoulish, dark, goth fascination with him. I felt I knew him. It was like when I was 10, 11 years old, I thought, I know this guy. Why do I know him from somewhere? So we occasionally would have group channelings where we would pick like somebody famous or something and have this group channeling. And I want to try to connect with Edgar Allan Poe. And my friend's like, yeah, probably not a good idea. Probably a lot of people try that and he probably does not really want to go for that. No, I think I have this connection with him. Well, sure enough, he pops in, but he's pissed. He's stomping back and forth. He's glaring at me. He's like, what do you want? What do you want? I'm busy. What do you want? And my friend is like, just calm down, dude. We're here to talk. She thinks she has a connection with you. And he kind of looks at me, and he sits down, and my friend looks at me, she goes, were you a man or a woman when you knew him? I go, I'm pretty sure I was a man. And she says, I'm getting the name Thomas. And as soon as she said that, I'm looking, and I'm seeing Edgar Allan Poe, and his eyes just popped open. And he's like, Thomas. And I'm getting goosebumps right now, because he sits down, and his whole demeanor changed. And we spoke for a few minutes, and all I'm getting is he's getting this pounding headache, to go back to the Reiki. He just had splitting headaches all the time. I didn't try Reiki with him that first time because we were just overwhelmed that we actually got to connect with Edgar Allan Poe. So that night I'm frantically Googling Thomas Poe, what's his connection? Well, one of his best friends was a guy named Frederick William Thomas, who was also another critic. And he always referred to him in letters as my dear friend Thomas. So I think maybe I was his friend Thomas in a previous life. Okay. So in a subsequent, channeling with Poe, so hey, I'm your buddy Thomas. Hey, how you doing? He took his whole demeanor changed. He would be sitting at a desk. He'd have his feet up on the desk. A cat would hop up on his lap. He'd be sitting there petting the cat. Yes, he's dead. Yes, he's on another realm, but I offered to buy him a drink. You can do that. Suddenly the drink will appear before him, whatever he wants.
That's so cool.
You put that intention out there, the drink will appear. I don't know how it works. I can't explain how it works, but it works. But he still had these awful headaches. And I'm like, I think I can do something about that. And he's looking at me and I'm like, I don't think so. So I just put the intention out there, and I just concentrate on pulling that pain, pulling that energy away from him. And he gets me that look again where his eyes just pop out, and we're making eye contact, and like with a finger snap, his headaches were gone. And I didn't know it would work. I just gave it a whirl, but using that universal energy and able to reach out and putting that intention out there, I was able to relieve him of that horrible pain that he'd been experiencing for 180 years,
wow,
so to speak. So it's wild how it works, but it's a tool set that I think every investigator should be able to use, because if you're going into locations, if you're going to hospitals, if you're going into cemeteries, if you're going into places where there are people at unrest, in pain, in that trauma, in that transition, what a wonderful tool to have a healing modality. It doesn't work just on pain, physical pain. It works wonderfully on emotional trauma. I work a lot with women's battered centers and on veterans. It just is a fabulous skill set to have on drawing away from that emotional trauma. Because what Reiki does, I don't just zap a person, they're healed. What Reiki does is it identifies the blockage in the flow of that person's personal energy. And you have that tool set to remove that and to get that energy flowing again. So what Reiki actually does is it helps that person heal themselves. Because every cell in our body has the innate ability of healing. Be it a brain cell, be it cells in our heart, the skin cells. They can actually do wondrous things as far as healing themselves. So the Reiki gets that energy flowing again, gets that blockage out of there, and allows that body to heal itself. So be it someone who has passed and has an emotional or physical trauma that they are still cycling in, or if it's a living person that is going through cancer, it's a wonderful skill set to have, and I really highly recommend it to anyone who works in the paranormal. Go get some Reiki training. It will really escalate your paranormal investigations tenfold.
I do kind of agree with you. I mean, I work with crystal energy, which is sort of like tuned into the Reiki kind of way of working. Excuse me. Even though I'm not Reiki trained, I can still do that through crystal work in the field. So I understand exactly what you're talking about, because you can use those kind of energies to enhance your investigation.
Now, what are your thoughts on Moldavite? Have you worked with Moldavite at all?
I have worked with Moldavite. It is incredible. It blows your mind if you're not used to working with crystal energy. You have to be very, very careful with it. It can cause physical manifestations that you may not be ready yet to deal with, because it is so powerful. So I've known people when they first start working with it to have headaches and nausea and feeling very disaligned with things. But once you start working with it rather than fighting against it, then it starts to release those blockages, and it can be incredibly empowering, a crystal.
Yeah, it's almost like fire. It can be a bit erratic, but once you know how to kind of harness it, it really is an amazing one. My favorite crystal is called Herkimer quartz. Oh, yeah. It comes out of two sources. It's basically a quartz crystal, but the best ones I've found come out of a mine in New York. Some come out of China. I don't like those ones. But the Herkimer quartz crystal out of New York is just one of the... And it's a very consistent, high vibration. If you ever have a chance to find some of that, that's wonderful stuff to work with.
I use some of those. We call it, in England, it's Hakoma.
Okay.
Just for those people out there, just a pronunciation difference. I use those when I'm working in the field quite often because they're the closest vibration to real diamonds that you will get. They are incredibly empowering, and they're also, now and again, what you'll do is you'll get one with an iron oxide inclusion inside it, or a carbon inclusion inside it, and it helps you to link into earth energies incredibly powerfully. And so when you're working in the field in particular, because obviously I work with crystals in the paranormal field, what it does is it helps to bring those earth energies through, which helps to bridge that gap. So if you've got earthbound spirits, they find that energy incredibly, like you said, very even, very nice and powerful and magnifying to help them bridge that gap. So for me, I use them quite often, and because I can't afford real diamonds in the field, who could? But Hakoma is the next best thing. If you're going to go to somewhere where there's a location in England called the True Crimes Museum, and one of the alleged spirits there is a diamond thief. So I used Hakomas in that particular way to try and help them to manifest, but also to attract them.
Oh, yeah, so I use it as a bit of a trigger object as well. I love trigger objects.
Yeah, so I used it in that way because I use crystal gridding. I don't know if you've heard that term in the paranormal field. So that's how I'm working over here in the UK, trying to help, like I say, help bridge that gap between the spiritual and the physical. So allowing them to move forward into the physical and interact a little bit better, hopefully. So far, so good.
Well, I think that's wonderful. A lot of people don't, they use maybe crystals for protection or for just a bit of an antenna, but I really like the idea of using a grid during an investigation because, it works to help focus that energy and to almost create a small portal of energy to draw the spirits in and to help them guide them and to attract them. I like that idea quite a bit.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, when I go to a location, I grid. I work in, intuitively finding the areas where, there are we call them hotspots in the UK, and then I will grid accordingly and use the crystals that fit that energy the best. So, and that's how I work in the field. I need a tool. I'm not a medium like yourself. I need that tool, and crystals is what I work with best. So, but
you use them intuitively. So in that respect, you're actually using your innate psychic ability because your mind is telling you this is what... I can't tell you how many times I've been setting up a grid for a manifestation class or something, and my friend and I were just, no, we need these, no, we use fire on this one, no, we need these kind of crystals. Because, you'll switch it around based on the energy in the area, and your intuition is the best way of setting up a grid. So in a way, you actually are kind of reaching out in your own psychic abilities. Don't put yourself down. Like I said, we all have the psychic abilities. It is a skill set, and the more people use it, the better they get at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use tech particularly at all in the field. I call my crystal kit my tech, and that's where I work. And I won't really touch voice recorders and stuff because I'm really not good at pressing buttons in the dark.
I think that the only way that you can be the more credible investigator is by having the most advanced, the most expensive, the fanciest equipment out there, because they say, that's the only way you can actually validate that something happened. And I can't entirely agree with that. I like to have my equipment. What I like to say is I use my scientific equipment to document and to validate what I am already experiencing in the location.
Yeah.
I don't need the validation of the equipment to tell me, yes, this place is haunted. I don't need the equipment to make me a credible investigator. You don't need the equipment to make you a credible investigator. You have your crystals, you have your intuition to use. And what I touch on in the book is what you are, your body, your physical being is one of the most powerful tools out there. How long have these paranormal pieces of equipment been out there? I don't know, a couple decades? Are we picking them off the shelf from a contractor shelf and utilizing them in a way to pick up electromagnetic fields? How many millennia has the human body been honed to touch on the energies around them? We are the best scientific equipment that's out there, is the human body.
I totally agree with you.
Some of the oldest, too. I think I'm kind of old. Yeah, I've been around there a long time. But yeah, the human body has been so carefully honed to pick up on the energies around it, being our chakras, being to be in touch with the divine energies around us. And from an instinctual standpoint, even from the caveman, gee, is that rustling in the bush? Is that the wind? Or is that rustling in the bush a tiger going to hop out of me? I need to make a decision based on what I'm seeing before me. So it is so much more advanced, I think, than a lot of the equipment out there. I think people don't feel that they will have a credible experience if they just go in with their flashlight, with their own body, with a pad and paper, and experience what they are in a haunted location. And I think people really need to... I think we're at a point, regardless of what the public may say, of do ghosts exist, you and I and all of our colleagues know there is something beyond the veil. I think we've proven that already. You know, we can get more EVPs, we can get more shadow figures. What I would like is to more of a focus on that true connection. Okay, they're there. Okay, they're reaching out. Now what? They're asking for help. They're asking to maybe have one more connection, to have that conversation so they don't feel that they are forgotten. Maybe they're in that location because they have such a responsibility that they were maybe a caretaker of that location and they want to make sure that you now are there and that you're responsible for that location. I want to really kind of focus on the physical connection with the people rather than just saying, yeah, it's haunted. Okay, let's move on. Okay, it's haunted. They're there. Let's talk to them. Let's learn from them. Let's see what they have to continue to say now that they're on that side. Let's have a conversation. That's where I would kind of like to see the field go rather than this company. I have the best EVPs. I have the best evidence. I have the best equipment. Let's continue the conversations with those on the other side.
No, I'm with you on that. I think it's a bridged effect. You need the scientific and the gadgets and the whistles and the beeps and the bleeps, but you also need that spiritual connection as well. I definitely think attacking it from both sides is important. So I started in the field in a very spiritual way, hence why I wanted to do the Spirit Dimension show rather than I do other shows that are very scientific based. But I do feel that when we're out working in the field, it should be a bridged effect, a bridged thing, working together in the field to move the field forward rather than one way or the other. It should be a bridged effect.
I totally agree. I think people really limit themselves by staring at these little 2-inch LED screens, and there might be a spirit right behind them. And they're so focused on just getting that validation of what the equipment is telling them that I think they're really missing out on using their body, just feeling out the location and reaching out and getting that connection. I can't tell you how many times they're staring at these little screens in the dark saying all that's going to be haunted, all that's going to be paranormal is what's going to appear in this little LED screen. And I think they're kind of limiting themselves that way.
I do think they're limiting, but the data is important too. So, like I say, it's building up that picture, but bridging both sides of it. Because I don't think that you can just go out and do a purely scientific investigation without working on a spiritual front as well. I think you're, like you said, cutting off half your investigation time, your investigation experience, actually. Because without both, how can you gauge it? And if, like you said, if you're so focused on the equipment that you've got in front of you, half the time you're missing what your body is telling you, and that is incredibly important.
Exactly, but like you said, we do need both. We do need the unbiased equipment to not only validate what's there, but to debunk what we might be thinking is paranormal is something that's no more than high EMFs, or an infrasound that might be affecting our minds or our eyes and making us see things that we might perceive as paranormal, but might just be a trick of the eye. So we do need both. We need the unbiased equipment, but we also need to use ourselves to make that true connection, because the equipment isn't going to make the connection. The equipment is going to tell us one way or the other if it's something paranormal or something really worldly.
Yeah, I agree with you. On that note, let's just take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Kitty about some of the amazing locations that she has actually investigated. So bear with us and we'll be right back.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Well, welcome back to the Spirit Dimension show. Tonight I am joined on the Spirit Dimension with the wonderful Kitty Janusz, who has written a book called When the Dead Speak, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigations. Now, before the break, we were discussing how our bodies are one of the best tools, and working in a spiritual way alongside the scientific way in the field is so important and shouldn't be underestimated. But I want to talk to you now, Kitty, regarding, you have investigated some awesome locations. On my bucket list is the RMS Queen Mary.
And I'm going to make you guys all very jealous, but Queen Mary is about 30 minutes from my house.
Oh, no.
And sometimes just on my day off from work, if I actually have some free time or don't feel like going to the gym or something, I go and visit my Queen Mary. And I'm just very, very blessed to have her so nearby. But she is just a wonderful joy. And the issue with what the Queen Mary is, she was purchased by the city of Long Beach, but then she was leased to several hotel firms over the course of many years. So there was some debate over who might be in charge of maintaining her. And she did go into a bit of disrepair over the course of some years. And I want to say they are finally doing a wonderful full restoration on her, from stem to stern to paint to actually contacting the company that did the original carpeting on her and getting, period-looking carpeting back in the Queen Mary. And I think that the spirits are responding in kind to that. I think they are very, very pleased with what's been going on there. But the Queen Mary does have a storied past. She was used as a passenger ship. She was finished in 1936. It was used as a transatlantic trips. And then in wartime, she was used as a troop transport. And she did have an accident during wartime when one of her escort ships crossed in front of her, and she unfortunately sliced that ship in half, and over 400 lives were lost in that. There is so much love for the Queen Mary. I can't really explain why. I mean, I don't know anybody who has an unkind word to say about the ship. She's just a beautiful piece of Art Deco wonder. She has these huge 8-foot alabaster lamps in the Queen's salon. They maintain, the brass railings and the wood. And not just the living adore her, but I rarely have experienced, quote, a trapped spirit aboard the Queen Mary. All the spirits that come and go are as adoring of her as the living are. And I think that's just what keeps drawing people there. And being an iron ship, we were talking about iron oxide and iron as a draw for the spirit world. She's also sitting on water, which is another draw, which also resonates energy.
Yeah.
And all of those energies are imprinted, the wartime energies, the accidents of the Curacoa, the many, many troop transports. I mean, she would transport 40,000, troops at a time. So there's all that energy imprinted on her. But I've had amazing experiences on her, day, night, evening, with equipment, with just myself, with Ouija boards. And one of my just oddest experiences with her was at 10 o'clock in the morning. And once again, I say you don't have to be in the middle of the night during the witching hour to have amazing paranormal experiences.
No.
We had spent the night on the Queen Mary, girlfriend and I, and it was about 10 in the morning, and we were walking down B deck, which is the longest stretch of hallway on the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary is bigger than the Titanic. The Titanic would fit inside the Queen Mary. She's a big girl. And we're walking down the hallway, and the way that the staterooms work on the Queen Mary is it's a long hallway and the little tiny offshoot hallways that go to the little staterooms. Very, very short, maybe about 8-10 feet. So we're walking down the hall, just the two of us, and all of a sudden this woman appears, turns the corner from one of those little short hallways and starts walking alongside of us. I don't know, if I'm by myself and I'm walking with another person and another person appears, usually that person will give you a bit of personal space. They'll walk maybe 10 feet ahead of you, 10 feet behind you. No, this lady starts walking right next to us. So, of course, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's kind of odd, but whatever. And then I notice she's wearing complete period clothing. She's got the little 1940s, suit on. She's got the little pump. She's got her hair, the jelly roll, and she's wearing the little short white gloves. But that doesn't set me off. That doesn't ring any bells initially, because I figure, okay, they're hiring people to dress in period attire to work on the ship. They've also been known to have, big, 1920s, roaring 20s dances, on the ship. So I think, okay, maybe there's an event coming up. Maybe they've hired her to dress in period costume. That doesn't set off any bells. So this lady in period clothing is walking alongside of us, and it's still not occurring to me this is something odd, because she's absolutely solid. Looks like a real person. Then she starts talking to us as we're walking along. And she has this little white gloved hand, and she's running her fingers along the side of the wall, of the wood paneling as we're walking. That I thought was odd, because I'm thinking she might get her glove dirty or something. I think that's not something a woman would do in that nice little business suit with the white gloves. Drag her fingers along the wall as she's walking. That I thought was a bit odd.
Uh-huh.
And she just starts chatting with us. I just love the ship. I just stay here. And then poof, she turns a little corner and goes to get in one of the staterooms. And my friend and I walk about 10 feet, and I just stop in the middle of the hallway. She and I look at each other. Was she real? And I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing the click of the doorknobs or anything. And I ran and I turned and I go down this little hallway. There was nobody there. she I would have heard her if she'd gone into the room because the hallways are so short. The doors are the levers are rather noisy. They're original door levers on these staterooms.
Yeah.
There was nobody there. She was absolutely solid, talked in a normal voice, and the weirdest thing that occurred to me was she's running her little gloved hand along the wall. And then she says, I just love this ship. I just stay here. Like, okay. I think she might have been a spirit. Okay, there you go. And that was just one of, hundreds of, encounters I've had aboard the Queen Mary. I do a lot of investigations, during the day, in the afternoon, at night. They do have nightly investigations there, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And I've actually interviewed the very lucky gentleman in charge of doing those investigations. And you never know where they're going to be. They can be in the rooms, they can be in the halls, they can be anywhere. And everything from hearing music to, having the hangers move back and forth in your room. And it's all usually very, very friendly. The areas where it can be a little bit dicier would be in the areas where they would hold either the POWs or the infirmary areas where, I get a lot of activity in the infirmary area. Not everybody does, but for some reason, that was where I actually got my very, very first EVP. It was in the infirmary on the Queen Mary. So that area holds a very soft spot for me. Mm-hmm. But the pool room is probably what is considered the most active area.
Yeah, I think the pool room in the UK is the best known because of one of the TV programs over here. So the pool room.
Yeah, and the odd thing is, they say there's a little girl spirit, Jackie, who stays there. And I have had many, many conversations with this Jackie spirit, as has everybody else. Peter James, the very famous psychic, has many recordings that he has very audible. It's a very audible room. You can get a lot of chatting back and forth. If you sing London Bridge is Falling Down, a lot of times she will finish the song for you. And one time I was in that room with about 20 other people, and the way that the pool room is set up, there's a balcony that runs around the top, and the pool is in the bottom area. And we decided to try something different because we weren't really picking up on the spirit Jackie that particular night. And so one of the gentlemen in our group was in the Navy. So he calls out in his big booming voice, I spent 17 years in the Navy, and I want to hear the other sailors who I've been on this ship. I don't want to hear the little spirit girl Jackie. I want to hear the sailors who are on the ship. I want you to sing our song, Anchors Aweigh, because I spent in the Navy and I'm honoring you here tonight. And so we're all sitting there listening, not really expecting to get a response, but we weren't sure. And it was a little bit like that scene in How the Grinch Stole Christmas on Christmas morning when the Who's down in Whoville start singing their little song. I kid you not, that's exactly how it started. It was very soft, very sing-song. And we're looking at each other. Are we hearing what we think we're hearing? And it wasn't one voice. It wasn't two voices. It wasn't 10 voices. It sounded like an entire male chorus up in this balcony, where, of course, you see nobody. There's nobody up there. Singing the first chorus of Anchors Aweigh, and it starts very, very soft, and it's getting louder and louder. And, of course, none of us want to interrupt and say, oh, my God, we hear something. So we're all like, our jaws are agape, and we're all pointing up there and looking at each other, wild-eyed. And this went on for about 30, 40 seconds of them singing Anchors Aweigh. And one of the unfortunate aspects of audible phenomena is you may hear it with your ears, but a lot of times it doesn't show up on a recording.
So
and
frustrating.
It didn't show up on anybody's recording, but we all heard it. So it becomes a bit more of a story, but it was just a wonderful experience that they reached out and they were so proud to have been on that ship, and they sang, anchors away for it. And I could tell you 100 stories just on the Queen Mary alone, but that's two of just some of the really more special ones that I've had aboard the Queen Mary. You don't know who you're going to get, but the spirits all, for the most part, all just adore the ship as much as anyone who visits the ship. And I think that just kind of reciprocates back and forth and back and forth. The more you go there, the more they reach out, because they say, oh, you love the ship too? Here I am. I mean, I've been there at 2 a.m. and just seen a little hologram of a guy in an overcoat just leaning over the railing and just kind of look at us and nod and then look back out over the ocean. It can be something as simple as that, or just picking up on a bubble of perfume as you walk through the hallway. But all of it is adoring of the ship, be you on that side of the veil or on this side. Everybody adores the Queen Mary.
It's definitely on my bucket list. I'm not going to lie. I think it's on the bucket list of quite a lot of the UK investigators, the RMS Queen Mary. Now, there is one other location that you've done. I mean, there's so many. You've done so many amazing. But I want to talk to you about the Graber House, or Grabber House?
Graber.
Graber. Now, you witnessed, or you experienced, should I say, a creeper.
Yeah, and that took me totally by surprise. Real quickly, the Graber House was utilizing old farm buildings, 100-year-old farm buildings, and it's a Graber olive ranch. The olives are grown elsewhere, and they bring these olives here to sort them and to can them and to cure the olive oil. But they utilize old 100-year-old buildings, and there's huge ancient trees on the property. So it was, old energy to begin with. And I think there's like you said, when you use your crystals, there's a lot of earth-based energies on this property. And for whatever reason, some of it is not very friendly at this particular place. And one of the areas we were investigating was this attic in this barn. And we waited until very, very late, because still at 1 a.m, it was about 90 degrees Fahrenheit in this attic. And so a group of us are up there, and they're focusing on, getting the EVPs. They're focusing on their equipment on the ground.
Uh-huh.
And I cannot tell you, when I see something, how many other people may be seeing it, but in subsequent conversations with friends, they have experienced the same creature at this Graber House. And while I'm looking at these people on the ground doing their thing, something catches my eye going up the wall of this attic. And why I just didn't scream and just say, look at this, I can't tell you. Once again, that kind of claircognizance comes into play, that when I'm dealing with aggressive or negative vibrational spirits, I don't like to give them the notoriety. I don't like to give them the attention. And that's kind of, I think, what it was wanting. And this thing, this entity, just gave me nightmares. It was crawling up the wall very slowly. And I hate spiders anyway, but this this thing had a body about 10 feet long. It had 4 limbs that were very, very small, about the size of a human arm. That it also extended out about 10 feet with one joint, and little round suction cup feet. And I could hear the as it's climbing up this wall. And it was kind of a grayish, bony, white color. And I could barely, that's what made me see it in the darkness, in the shadows, because it was this bony color. And it was smooth skinned. And it's up this wall, and it reaches up to the roof line, and it had a large human-shaped kind of head. So I could see its back, so it's upside down pretty much on the ceiling, and it rolls its head back to me. And I'm looking around going, am I like the only person seeing this huge, creepy thing? And nobody else is paying any attention, so I'm thinking, I guess they don't see it. And it rolls its head back, and it has these huge, just gaping caverns where the eyes should be. and it has this enormous crackly grin that just extends, and it smiles at me like, yes, you see me. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Was you like frozen to the spot at that point?
He's going to bounce off the ceiling and pounce on me if I acknowledge it. You're kind of like the big hairy spider. You just, if I leave it alone, it'll go away kind of thing. But it is something that has been seen on numerous occasions at this Graber house, and it is called the creeper. It's been seen in smaller sizes, but that was one of the more terrifying things that I have encountered, and all I can really relate to it as it's a very old earth energy. It didn't want to really communicate. It didn't want to cross over. It didn't want my help. It just was there, and it just, that crackly little grin like, yeah, I'm going to give you nightmares.
Uh-huh. And did it?
Yeah, that's another reason I talk a lot about boundaries and protection, because there's stuff out there that really defies definition sometimes, and you really have to be able to protect yourself, because this thing actually later did attack some people and almost give them convulsions because they were not aware of the energies in there. So yeah, it's a questionable neighborhood out there, and you really kind of have to be cognizant of, there's some really scary stuff out there. But yeah, when it had that little crackly grin, and it's just telling me, yeah, I see you too. There's some scary stuff out there. My goodness.
So, does this cross over into elementals? We talk about elementals in the UK as almost alter-dimensional beings. Is that how you see that in the US?
Yes, we talk about elementals a lot. Sometimes when I encounter them, they're a bit like that. They're just kind of watching you because they're attracted to your energy. Sometimes they're almost like a little slimy slug kind of thing that you're trying to shake off your ankle, and you're wondering all of a sudden, why do I kind of feel nauseous? Because, yeah, they're drawing your energy out. They're little energy vampires sometimes, and they're just attracted to the light. And we go back to working on boundaries and personal protection. You can be aware of these things without really giving them full acknowledgement, because you don't really want to give them that notoriety. You don't want to give them any extra attention. You want to just clear that space. But yet, we do encounter elemental, even in sunny Southern California. Yes, we have really creepy elemental energies here, because they become kind of a bit more transient because the real estate is so valuable here. And they start congregating in some of the quieter areas, and you find them. And I bet it's maybe a bit more prevalent in the UK, but even in California, we get the elemental energies. I see them either as black slug-like creatures about 3 feet long, and maybe about the height of a dog, or sometimes as these creeper-sucking energies.
I think we view them slightly differently in the UK. I mean, we get those kind of energies, but we view them in a very, very different way in the UK. They're not malevolent, they're just earth energies, or elemental energies, should I say, rather than earth, depending on where you're linking in. You're
going more into like a soot sprite or like a fairy type energy?
Yeah, they manifest in very, very different ways. And fairy is, I kind of don't like that term particularly, because it conjures up a specific image in your head. But as I say, they manifest in very different ways, and sometimes it's down to belief systems as to how they manifest and stuff like that. So it's very different in the UK in regards to those kind of entities that you can encounter in the UK. But I understand what you mean, because there was a pub that we a place that we used to investigate, and that kind of energy used to manifest not so much as that specific shape, but as a black mass, and it had that exact feel to it.
But elemental energy can really quickly gain a sense of entitlement to a location. And in that respect, then they can kind of become problematic. But they aren't always, malevolent. They can really get a sense of entitlement to a space, and then they can start causing problems. But yeah, they aren't always bad. The earth energy is a wonderful thing, but like you said, it does manifest in many, many different ways. I want to come to the
I totally agree with you.
Invite me to the UK, and you will take me around to the best places, won't you?
Oh my God, yes, of course I would.
I have never been to the UK.
I've never been to the USA, and I'm saving really hard because one of my co-hosts, Jay Lynch and Teresa, they are based in the UK, in the USA, should I say. And they keep going, come over, we're going to take you to some amazing properties and, do loads of investigations. And I'm like, I'm so on that plane as soon as I can manifest the money.
Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, I will definitely love to come and investigate with you anytime.
That would be absolutely awesome. We've actually come to the end of the show. We're actually running over now at the moment. I could talk to you all night, so thank you so much for joining me. I would love you to come back and talk to me a little bit more.
Oh, I would love to, anytime.
So we'll sort a date out and we'll get you back on because there is so much. In the meantime, if you want to check Kitty out, she's on www.kittyjanusz.com. I will share all the links in the chat room, as always. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it was so much fun. I definitely would love to come back.
I will definitely be having you back on because, as I say, I could talk to you all night. Kitty's book is When the Dead Speak, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigations. I have read this book. It is absolutely awesome. And like I said right at the beginning of the show, it bridges the gap between the spiritual and the scientific and gives you loads and loads of information as well regarding history, theories such as the stone tape theory, earth energies, water memory, amongst a few, as well as looking at some of the locations that Kitty has actually done, which includes the RMS Queen Mary, the Stanley Hotel, the Oman House, which is the Charles Manson murders house, and the location we were talking about with the Creeper, which is the Graber House. Again, thank you so much, Kitty. I bid you all a very, very farewell. And Kitty will be back with me very shortly. I'll make sure of that. Thank you so much for joining me. And good night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.